Good evening and welcome to my How Healthy Are You weekly educational call. My name is Dr. Thomas Brewer. I'm a PhD chemist, and for this evening's call, I've only got two questions, so I'm going to go over both of them. And I know the first question is from someone on the call, Beth, and her question was about IBS, which is known as irritable bowel syndrome. But it's extremely similar to Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, diverticulitis, diverticulosis. These are all very similar problems. They all entail extreme inflammation and pain at the lower end of the large intestine and the colon. So it can be in both areas. And I'm going to go into the root cause and how to heal yourself. I remember years ago, I was working for the UFC, or at least I was working with some of the fighters, even with Dana White himself. And one of the former heavyweight champions who ended up going into wrestling after working in the UFC, a very big guy, he ended up with irritable bowel disease. I'm not sure. I think it might have been Crohn's. Anyway, they're all very similar. And he decided not to listen to me, and it ended up really ruining his UFC career because he just wasn't the same guy and started losing weight. It's a horrible problem when you have all that inflammation either near the colon or in the colon, because it's hard to eliminate waste, and you get confused as to what you can eat and what you can't eat. And that's really where the problem is. Once you have any of these types of diseases of the colon, colitis, Crohn's, IBS, it's a matter of healing the problem, because most any food you eat is going to aggravate it. And the root cause of such a problem did start with food. It starts with our food choices. Pretty much in every case, the root cause is consuming too much animal flesh. So in general, it's going to be beef, pork, and chicken. It's too much cow, pig, and chicken type foods. To a much lesser extent, fish. It's usually the main farm animals and consumption of meat. And over time, this meat, if it does not completely metabolize, and that's where an enzyme deficiency comes in. So as we age, we don't completely metabolize and eliminate these flesh meat sources. They start to accumulate, they putrefy, and bacteria tends to grow in that area, and then the bacteria causes inflammation in the colon. So that's the root cause. It's from dietary choices. And once you have it, it doesn't matter what you eat, you're going to have a lot of pain. So the solution is twofold. Number one, you've got to get a lot of probiotics into your system that colonize in the colon. So that means these probiotics have to make the trip past the stomach. And not many probiotics can do that. There's a special technology, science, Sometimes these are even secrets to have probiotics make the trip past the stomach. Now, one of those that can do that is the Enriching Gifts probiotics. They'll make the trip. They will not get destroyed in the stomach. And the stomach has much higher acidity than the rest of the gastrointestinal system. And the reason for that acidity is to activate the protease enzyme so you can digest things like meat. But that acidity keeps growing if your body can't release the protease enzyme from your pancreas. So you end up building more and more acidity. That acidity will wreak havoc on your probiotics, and then you can't protect yourself from things like Crohn's and ulcerative colitis and IBS. So to reseed your system, you take a real good probiotic. I would start off with 6 per day, essentially 2 at the beginning of every meal. I do that for at least 1 month. The next month, I would drop down to 1 per meal, i.e. 3 per day. And then, so this doesn't come back, a maintenance would be 1 probiotic per day. I've seen many people kick the problem, get rid of it. I hate to use the word cure, but they just eliminate the pain and the issue, and the next step is to heal the damage. But you've got to start with the probiotics because, in essence, the lack of probiotics is what caused all of this. And if you don't maintain the probiotic content, well, it'll just come back, and then we got to start all over. And it's very painful, so I don't think anybody that has any of these diseases would want to start over. So that is the first part. Now, the next part is to heal the damage that occurred when you start experiencing pain. Because when you experience pain, that means there is damage. And I'm sure anyone with any of these diseases has seen the pictures of ulcerative colitis or Crohn's or IBS. You could look them up online. Just type the name into any search engine, and you'll see some pictures. And they're extremely inflamed and red and looks very painful. So we've got to heal that tissue. Now, it's very difficult to heal tissue inside the body, much trickier than healing a cut on the outside of your body, i.e. on your skin. So the way you would do that is you would take a cell regenerator. The best one I know is Aloe Ace Max. In fact, I don't even know of another cell regenerator out on the market that is even close to Aloe Ace Max. And it's made from freeze-dried aloe, but it's the rind where the polysaccharide content is extremely high, and it allows the cells to reproduce. But you'll have to take that aloe in conjunction with taking probiotics, not necessarily the same moment, but the same day, because the probiotics will prevent further damage to the colon and further inflammation and allow the probiotic bacteria to do their job, which is essentially to destroy parasites, yeast, and fungus, the bad bacteria. But to heal that tissue, you can't have too much bad bacteria in the area, and that's where the Aloe Ace Max will come in. It will heal that tissue at a very fast rate. It'll work inside the body, so it'll work anywhere you need cellular regeneration. And I would keep taking the Aloe Ace Max until you feel good, and I take it for another 2 or 3 months. Just because you don't have pain doesn't mean you're completely healed on the inside. That just means you're almost healed. The dosage for the Aloe Max, I would start with 2 per meal. You can also take 2 between meals. I would alternate. Some days I'd take it with my meal, some days I'd take it between meals, but I would take at least 6 per day for the first 2 months, and then the next 2 months I would take 3 per day, so that would be either 1 per meal or 1 between meals, and I would maintain that for, so you end up with a total of 6 months. Now, once you're healed, you're healed. Once you get the cellular regeneration from the Aloe Max, you're good. And you don't necessarily need to keep taking Aloe Max. You do need to keep taking the probiotics, but not necessarily the Aloe Max. Now, if we take this a step further, you would also want to decrease your meat flesh intake, and you would also want to increase your enzyme intake, your plant enzyme intake, because once the body starts getting more acidic in the stomach due to lack of protease enzyme production in the pancreas, it just gets worse. So the amount of protease enzyme that your body can produce from your pancreas is only going to diminish with age. So if you're already showing signs that you're not making enough protease enzyme, one sign would be an acidic stomach. Well, it's only going to get worse with time. That pancreas is not going to get better with age. None of us really get better with age. We're just always fighting the aging process. And the whole goal here is to have high quality of life as we get extremely old. And the best way to do that is to keep your organs strong. And the best way to do that is to keep taking enzymes so your organs are not working too hard. Because the harder they work, the more inflamed they get. So if one consumes less meat, all the way up to hardly consuming it, personally, I decrease my meat intake somewhere between 80 to 90% less than what I used to do. And I noticed a lot of inflammation went away, and my strength is as good or better. So it's not like I lost strength eating a lot less meat. So it's very possible to do this, and most people are going to reach an age, you're going to have to make a decision. Am I going to cut back on meat, or am I going to live with pain due to inflammation? So if you're going to keep eating meat, like I've said in previous conference calls and in my newsletter, in the written part, take your enzymes and combine the meat consumption with lots of vegetables. That's your best way to balance the meat intake. And some people do fine eating, let's say, meat every day. Some people do fine with it. And some people do fine when they're young, and then as they get older, it's more difficult to eat that much meat and not have inflammation. You'll notice inflammation in your knees. You may even notice it as arthritis as you get older. A lot of it starts with not digesting our proteins from meat well. The stomach gets very acidic because the stomach produces acid as a signal for the pancreas to release protease enzyme, which digests proteins, but the pancreas can't release enough of it. So more acidity builds up in the stomach, as if your stomach is yelling at your pancreas, please give me more protease enzyme. And then you have too much acidity in your stomach. And one thing that acidity does is it'll travel through the gastrointestinal system and lower the probiotic count throughout your system. And you don't want that. So it's the beginning of problems as you age, down the chain of the gastrointestinal system. So Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, diverticulitis, diverticulosis, irritable bowel syndrome, they're all slightly different, but they're extremely similar, kind of similar to cancer, has a lot of similarities, no matter where it is in the body. And all of these IBS-type problems are solved with a combination of probiotics, a cellular regenerator like Aloe Ace Max, consuming less meat, and taking more plant enzymes. If you're not taking any plant enzymes, I suggest you start. And if you are taking plant enzymes, you'll probably want to increase your dose by 1 extra capsule per meal. Some people, as they age, they actually need fewer plant enzymes per meal because they started at a young age. The ones that start in their 30s tend to need fewer plant enzymes by the time they get into their 40s. And those that start in their 40s and 50s, they tend to not ever need fewer. They need to pretty much stay at something like 3 per meal. And keep in mind, the Enriching Gifts plant enzymes, they're about 10 to 30 times more active than most enzymes on the market. So 3 of these plant enzymes, the Enriching Gifts plant enzymes, are like somewhere between 30 to 90 of other brands, which becomes prohibitively expensive, and you'd just be swallowing a huge amount of pills. You'd be going through pretty much a bottle a day or a bottle every 3 days, which makes most ineffective enzymes extremely expensive based on activity. So a good standard of comparison is you would want your plant enzyme to be about 100,000 HUT, which is a unit to measure protease activity, 100,000 HUTs per capsule. That is a decent protease enzyme. Of course, a plant enzyme blend has more than protease, but you would want that to be the protease. Most people's problem is the protein digestion. So that should answer Beth's question. Now, the other question I have concerns food allergies. And as most of you know, I offer food allergy testing in the office. I can also send someone the kit, and they can do it themselves. It comes with instructions. You take 10 drops of blood from a finger, and it's added, or it's touched to a special paper with 10 little circles on it. You put these drops of blood in the circle and let it dry and mail it away. It comes with the mailing kit. And in about 2 weeks, you get the results. But the question about food allergies is the cause and the resolution. What causes these food allergies, and what can you do about it? So food allergies are a bit of a mystery because the body is reacting to something it technically should not be reacting to. People's food allergies are to food because they're food allergies. Why would you be allergic to a food? And often the cause of these food allergies is very difficult to pin down. A common cause goes back to digestion. If you do not completely digest a particular food and it's part of your repertoire, meaning you eat it constantly, perhaps once a day or once every other day. You're consuming a lot of this food, but you're not completely digesting it. Over time, meaning years, your body will start looking at that food as an allergen, meaning it will react to it the same way you would react to a virus. You'd make antibodies against it, right? That's the whole thing about viruses. We want to make antibodies against the virus, something that would cause a cold. In fact, coronaviruses are cold viruses. But you want to make antibodies against something bad. But if you're not digesting something, the body thinks that's something bad, so it makes antibodies. And that leads to inflammation, sneezing, coughing, all the way up to fever and headaches. So, or even skin rashes, right? So the body is reacting to something because it was not digesting it. The solution to that would be to stop consuming that food for anywhere from 2 to 6 months. And 2 months is really short. I mean, that's for people that don't have a lot of patience. And 6 months is much, much better. And during that time, you take your enzymes because you're going to be allergic to something in that food, typically the food's protein, a carbohydrate in the food, or a fat in the food. So those are macronutrients, proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. And once you start digesting the entire macronutrient system, then when you reintroduce the food you were allergic to, you'll be able to digest it. Your body won't think of it as an allergen because it hasn't had it in a while, and it's been digesting the components of that food for, say, 6 months. And then you can gradually and slowly reintroduce that food. So that's typically what happens with allergies. Now, sometimes allergies are caused by something similar to the irritable bowel syndrome, and that's just a probiotic deficiency. And that's what revs up the immune system, i.e. the white blood cells, and the probiotics are a big part of our immune system. So there's a whole system of immune cells. And so taking probiotics also helps, but you got to do the same thing. You've got to stop consuming the food that your body thinks is an allergen, and so it stops making these antibodies because it's just not if the food isn't around, the antibodies will stop getting formed. And then if you can rebalance your probiotic bacteria so that you have more probiotic than parasitic bacteria like yeast and fungus, well, then you can reintroduce the food so it goes back into that. The other part of the question was concerning if you can switch foods. And the way the food allergy test works is if one is allergic to a particular nut, for instance, you're actually allergic in some degree to all nuts. It just may not be as big of an allergy. So the question was, can you just switch nuts? And the answer is yes, to some extent. But you really want to avoid nuts until you can reintroduce them. And my advice would be to avoid nuts. And when you start reintroducing them, let's say around 6 months later, start with other nuts you weren't allergic to, and then you can migrate toward the ones that you were allergic to. But allergies can be solved. but it involves a bit of a sacrifice, and none of us like to do any sacrifice. We just want to push a button, take a pill, do one thing, immediately have results, and I would like that too, but our bodies don't work that way. The best thing we can do is push the time along, like I said, to like that 2-month interval, and perhaps reintroduce the food in a very small quantity and see if you're allergic. And if you got away with it in 2 months, well, you save some time, allowing the body to readjust and not make antibodies to a food. So in a perfect world, you wouldn't be allergic to anything. That's a food. I mean, it's different being allergic to pet dander and various pollens. But as far as food, we should not be allergic to things. And personally, I was shocked when I found out I was allergic to some very, very good, healthy foods, such as turmeric, a very healthy spice. I was allergic to eggs, which was how I used to get most of my protein. I used to eat 3 eggs per day for breakfast. And then when I took the allergy test, I think I was only eating 2 eggs per day. And now I eat, I stopped eating eggs for, I think, 3 months. And then when I reintroduced them, I only eat 1 per week. So I can probably get away with more, but I've substituted my protein source in the morning. But personally, I'd love to get back to eating more eggs at breakfast time. But you always have to balance the good with the bad. Certain foods are very high in protein, like meat and eggs, but you have a bad side to them, which is the cholesterol. And if you can get rid of cholesterol quickly, then it's not a problem. But if you hang on to it, it is a problem. So it's all a balancing act, and that's really the purpose of these calls, to give people both sides to the health story. Just like previous weeks, I talk about vitamins and how strong they are, and all supplements. And it's best to consume something like that, thinking it's the same thing as a pharmaceutical product. Do I really need it? And if you do, great, and you get a benefit, great, because good vitamins and enzymes, they actually work. It's the bad ones that do nothing. So they're just a waste of money. And it's all tricky getting through life, and that's why I do these calls, so people can ask questions and I can give them a scientific answer, and I try my best to simplify how the body works. So with that being said, I'm going to end the call and wish everyone a healthy week, and I'll be doing another call next Monday. Okay, thanks for listening.